As many newspapers begin to shrink or even close under the pressure of instantaneous news from electronic media, there's an Orthodox Catholic newspaper looking to continue its 100-year legacy of reporting that is faithful to the Church through the new means and partnerships. We'll talk about that tonight, so please stay with us. Thank you very much. I'm Father Mitch, and welcome to EWTN Live, our chance to bring you guests from all over the world. Before we get to tonight's guest, I want to mention that today is the feast of Saint Boniface. Saint Boniface is just an amazing saint. He was born in England, and we don't know the exact year. And he became a monk, Benedictine, and he came to Germany and began to evangelize the barbarians. Now, it's very interesting to me. Barbarians were the ones that brought the darkness of the Dark Ages. And many silly people of the so-called Enlightenment period called this the Dark Ages and blamed the Church. But St. Boniface and many, many other, especially from the Benedictine order, were the ones who brought light, not only of the gospel, but also of learning from England and Ireland and Scotland and elsewhere. So we celebrate him. Now, he was martyred because the barbarians were worshiping trees and proving a point that the tree is not worthy of being called God. He chopped it down, something the barbarians couldn't do to God. So, but they did chop him down. They killed him and his disciples. So St. Boniface is a martyr, but the church that he began in Fulda, Germany, continues to the present. All right, now tonight we have two guests. They are staff members of the National Catholic Register, a newspaper which won the About.com Reader's Choice Award for Best Catholic Newspaper in 2013. It was acquired almost 2.5 years ago by EWTN. So please welcome the editor-in-chief of the National Catholic Register, Jeanette DeMelo, and the Register's executive director, Dan Burke, who also happens to be the author of a book, Navigating the Interior Life, which won the About.com Reader's Choice Award for Best Catholic Book of 2012-13. Welcome. Good to have you here. I have a lot to get you two introduced. You're all doing a lot. Jeanette, how long have you been the editor?
Just about a year. I'll be celebrating my first-year anniversary in just a couple of days.
Oh, great, great, great. Enjoying it?
I'm enjoying it greatly.
And Dan, you've been living here in Birmingham now for how long?
It's been a few years now.
Yeah, that's starting to rack up.
Yeah.
And, you know, I want to talk a bit about the Register. I introduced it. Is it a full 100 years?
It's not. It was founded.
So I lied?
It's close.
It's close.
Yeah, close.
It's close. It's 86.
80. That's not close enough.
It's
as a national.
As a
the
national
96-year-olds would never consider that old enough. So it's 86 as a national newspaper.
As a national newspaper.
But it was a local, and this is one of these things. Where did it start?
It started in Denver, which is actually where I live now. So it
Okay.
was the Denver Catholic Register. Which
And what year did it start in Denver?
I believe it started in 1900.
So it's more than 100 years old.
It is.
All right, so
It is.
I was sort of right.
As the Denver Catholic Register, you're exactly right.
Yeah. So it's started off as a diocesan newspaper. The question I have now for today, we're all very familiar with Denver as a very, very important cosmopolitan center. The airport is one of the most important in the country, and it's a beautiful city, very well known, but that wasn't the case in 1900. Right. How did the newspaper go from a diocesan newspaper in a relatively small and remote diocese to a national newspaper?
That's a really good question, and from my understanding, there was a Monsignor Matthew Smith. Before he was ordained, he was a journalist. Okay. He took over the paper and he started to grow the paper. He had a passion for journalism. And in the 1920s, I think 21 to 25, he was very active in combating the Ku Klux Klan in Denver. Which
a lot of folks oftentimes associate the Ku Klux Klan primarily with the South. Right. But that wasn't the case at all. It was national. Exactly. And the biggest Klan movement was in Indiana. Connecticut had, Oregon had a huge Klan in other western states as well.
Well, Denver became recognized for this combating of the Klan through the Register newspaper. Monsignor Smith was recognized, and it basically from there grew to a national newspaper. They saw the strength of it. I guess other dioceses wanted to use this newspaper, and eventually I believe it had 35 papers. It was a register system, so 35 diocesan papers that were connected to the Register, in addition to the National Catholic Register, which was, the national edition. And I believe at its height it had about almost 1 million subscribers, or circulation of 1 million.
Sure, sure. Which was pretty good size.
It's a very good size, yes.
Now, it's changed. It's been, like I say, a national paper for the last 86 years. But how did it get to EWTN? Dan, you probably know more about that since you're old and you remember those days.
I started with the paper in 2008 and worked for the Legion of Christ, who at that time were running the paper and owned the paper. And I was tasked with turning it around because, as many people know, the newspaper, as you mentioned in the intro, the newspaper circulation is generally on the decline. In fact, universally on the decline, with the exception of the Register, by God's great mercy. But through the process of helping the Register recover and get healthy, which we did, legionaries went through some struggles. So I was given permission in the around November of 2010 to sell the Register for the service of the church. The decision was made that it would be best if the Register continued rather than being shut down, but that it needed to be somebody else needed to take that ownership of it, that had the ability to finance it and that sort of thing. So there was a big meeting in Rome where that decision happened. So they gave me permission. An amazing part of the story is I created a list of those who I was going to contact. The top person on the list, the #1 person on the list, actually contacted me before I contacted him, and that was Archbishop Chaput. And he had been a part of the visitation of the Legion and understood the challenges and that sort of thing, and understood the paper as well, and was an advocate for us in connecting to Michael Warsaw and EWTN, of course.
Yeah, because Archbishop Chaput is on the board of EWTN as well, the Board of Trustees.
So an interesting, I mean, the Register coming to EWTN was in many ways in keeping with the miraculous tradition of EWTN. You could almost add it as an appendix to Mother Angelica's, the miracles that surround her. But we had scheduled, there was an end date to the Register where we were going to shut it down if we didn't find the buyer. And that was December 31st of 2010. So I had a meeting scheduled with the staff on December 8th, on the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, and which I hadn't considered at the time that was the date that I set to tell the staff that all their jobs would end at the end of the month and the register would cease. But I had received a letter from Archbishop Chaput and began the dialogue behind the scenes. It seemed promising, and then I set a meeting with Michael Warsaw, and the only time he could meet, the only time we could meet, was December 8th. So instead of meeting with the staff to tell them the register was shutting down, I met here in Mother Angelica's office with Michael Warsaw, and we had a very good rapport instantaneously. He obviously recognized the value and contribution of the register to the church, saw that it was in keeping with the mission of EWTN, that the register might become part of
it. In fact, it was part of Mother Angelica's dream. She wanted a newspaper to be part of the apostolate here.
Exactly.
So that's been very much part of her vision,
right.
Explicitly.
Well, and I'll come back to that in a minute because it was kind of an interesting part of the story. But so what happened was Michael and I met on the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, and we saw it as a very providential meeting, but we had one more hurdle to overcome to keep the register alive, which was we needed a very large donation in order to pay the payroll and all the expenses for an extra month for the time it would take for EWTN to acquire the register to get all the legalities in place. So essentially, and so the Lord did provide that through one donor who understood what was going on and what was needed and made a very large and generous donation. So all that said, we became part of EWTN officially on February the 2nd of 2011.
Feast of the presentation.
which is really, when you put these things together, it's really amazing. But in reference to what you said about Mother Angelica always wanting a paper, Michael, subsequent to the acquisition, met with the sisters at the shrine at Hansfield, the monastery, and mentioned and gave him an update on the register, and that's when they told him
yes.
and reemphasized that Mother had always wanted
yes.
newspaper as part of the apostolate. So,
well, see, one of the things that is very important is getting a slant on the news that is different than some of this. I mean, you have today, I think, it's more recognizable than I think in years past, that reporters are very biased for various political parties. Mm-hmm. You know, that they have strong agendas. Yeah. Most reporters are themselves non-church going.
Right.
I think it's something like 85%, and about the same percent are in favor of abortion and a number of other issues. And so when they report some things, like the March for Life gets downplayed, other things like when a crowd 1,000th the size shows up on another issue, that's a big crowd. So, this shows. Right. How are you dealing with this as a Catholic paper?
I think that's part of our mission, is to provide the Catholic perspective and to show sometimes the distortion that might be present in the secular media, sometimes because there isn't the moral framework or the religious framework to understand how to interpret the events of the church.
Even if they wanted to.
Even if they wanted to, they don't have it, exactly. Sometimes there's a willful distortion because it doesn't fit the agenda. Well, for us, our prerogative is really to provide that Catholic perspective, to tell the news, to tell the stories, events of our lives with accuracy, with honesty, with fairness, all of those principles of journalism, but also in light of the church and in light of Catholicism, in light of the natural moral order as well. So.
I remember attending a conference on religious media, even before I'd started coming here. One of the local radio stations in Nashville asked me to do this for them. And a group of reporters were explaining to religious journalists the difference. They say, the way we secular reporters are trained is to be skeptical. Religious people are trained in faith. It's the opposite approach to knowledge.
That skepticism is really, translates very quickly and easily into cynicism, which is, I think, a darker perspective on the news and the events of the day. But you're right. I mean, at the core of the Register's ethos, if you will, is a positive view, looking at the events of the world and our culture and recognizing God at work. And so even the stories that we take on oftentimes are much more positive on the whole than the media might, the secular media might be interested in. But it's because we do have faith. It's because we do see God at work.
Another quality that I notice in the Register is that there is a teaching component. For instance, you have a section that is a pro-life section.
Sure, the culture of life.
That's not just reporting data.
Right.
It's also teaching. Tell us about that.
That's right. That part of the newspaper is called the culture of life section of the paper. It tends to be features, it's also columns, and it's there that we get to tell the good news of the church. So a lot of things that are going on with regard to the new evangelization, or this year with the Year of Faith, or we will have a mom talking about raising her kids in the faith. And this is an opportunity to, one, teach, to catechize, but also to show the Catholics who are reading it, the community, and encourage them in what is going on in the church today. I think that that's a very important part that is not going to be provided in any other newspaper, that community aspect that we can provide and say there are people who are living the faith, there are young people, and there are families, there are people who are living the faith, and to provide in the culture of life section that kind of opportunity. But also in our news section, if we are covering something, for example, what the secular media called the war on women, the abortion and contraception mandate, and the church's opposition to that mandate because we're being forced to have it in our various insurance policies. That war on women, when we're talking about it, we can talk about what the church's teachings are, and we can quote the catechism to make clear that the church obviously supports women, but obviously sees the harm that contraception can have on the family and on women. So that's a teaching moment.
Yeah. That's another thing that is a fairly standard feature is in-depth interviews with various individuals doing news. So it's not only reporting events, which say going on with the Pope and various other things around the world, but also you'll choose certain individuals who are behind the news and let them really speak their perspective. Why do you do that?
I think that's one of my favorite parts of the paper. It's in person, and this is when we interview someone and let them tell the story. And it happens very much like this, Father. It's a conversation that we have with someone who is either prominent in news, as you said, or perhaps it's another means of evangelization. But this allows them the chance to say what they do, and it's their words. We're not constructing a story. It's what they have to say, and we ask the questions, and we draw out of them what is very interesting to our audience. But it's really a chance to hear what they have to say about what they're doing and about their ministry.
Another key element of that is we're trying to elevate people who may not be well recognized by folks outside of their region, let's say, where they might be, where they might have a very successful apostolic work or something that we think ought to have more prominence in the church that other Catholics might be interested in. So it's an opportunity to raise up voices that are very, that should have more influence in the church, in our view.
And I think that's a very important element. You know, even though the paper did start over 100 years ago and became a national paper 86 years ago, this is also an aspect of the Vatican II document on the church's use of media. That, you know, the church is very committed to the media. You know, the first thing printed on a printing press was the Bible. You know, so how do you see the Vatican II document on media in your own work?
Yes, that document, Inter Mirifica, you know, I reread this year. It's
not very long.
No, it's 5 pages.
Short.
If you print it from the internet, it was written in 1963, so it's 50 years old. And it's very interesting. It's divided into 2 parts, and the first part really tells the church's view of the media. And what I found, and they do see it as positive. It's something that can be used for the good, but it also has its dangers. And one of the things I found so remarkable about this is it talks about the duty that the media have to inform its, you know, the citizens or the people.
This is the secular media.
Yes, the secular media is for the common good. So they are informing people so that they can better attribute and contribute to the common good and for the advancement of the good of society. Yeah. And it talks about the primacy of the objective moral order. Well, I read this, and this is talking about secular media, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that's why we need the Catholic media today, is because there is no longer an objective moral order that is given any kind of primacy in the secular media.
Except for the principle, don't judge me. Apart from that, anything I think goes.
Unless you're Catholic.
Unless you're Catholic, then you can judge.
Then you can judge.
Or
any
religious person.
Any religious, right.
I mean, Orthodox Jews, yeah, they can be judged.
Yeah.
You know, conservative Protestants, but don't judge me.
That's right.
It's astounding, the things they don't want us to judge, because I was, you know, watching a program about teaching girls a code of immorality, and it's amazing what they are pushing girls to do in terms of egomania and a wide variety of other sins, and teaching them to be violent. It's astounding.
And that's part of what we are attempting to do, what we seek to do, is to bring to light these threats to dignity, to the dignity of the human person, the dignity of marriage, the dignity of family. And they happen sometimes in small ways that go unnoticed. They definitely go unnoticed in the secular media. And so a lot of times we'll try to bring these kind of threats to the surface so that we can talk about them and point out how they are threatening to the common good of society.
That's very much the common good of society. I've been doing a lot of thinking over the past year and a half about how we don't have a barbarian invasion coming into the country. Instead, we are raising our children to act like barbarians. And the media is one of the places where they're learning barbaric behavior.
Yeah. Sure.
And it's so self-destructive.
Right.
So we need to be the antidote.
Right. And when you were talking about the St. Boniface bringing the light, I was thinking that's what we hope to do, is to bring light, to shed light on the place of faith in our lives, in the culture, the place of faith in the common good, because that's no longer looked at. It's, as we were talking about before, it's judged rather than looked at as a very valuable, important, and necessary contribution to society.
Well, even the idea that you would seek that which is beautiful. Well, we can't decide on norms of beauty, so we're not going to seek it. We're just going to seek what I like. Or even the common expression, people, when they're upset, will say, that annoys me. Not that it is wrong, but it's how it affects me that matters.
Sure.
And I'm annoyed. And this is becoming part of common speech now.
Sure. Actually, there's another part of the paper that I love, and it's the arts and entertainment part. And that.
What do you do with that?
Sure. In that part of the paper, we talk about television programs that are on. We'll talk about DVDs or CDs.
That are worthwhile.
That are worthwhile, that we want to watch. The things we recommend. But also art. We'll talk about the Vatican museums, especially the Sistine Chapel. We did a whole thing on that when the conclave was going on because people were interested in it. But we always try to bring something artistic into each edition of the paper.
Yeah, yeah. You know, and there, I don't know, but do you find that there is a certain amount of controversy that you get from what you report? Does it ever cause any controversy, even with, you know, I know of course you're religious, but do any people inside the church find what you do controversial?
Most certainly. I mean, that happens a lot, and especially it happens online.
Sweet people like you.
Yeah, online is the key.
Online all the time. So we allow comments on our articles, and so we get very many sometimes comments on what people think, and it's always what they think. And so some will be very for it, very positive, and then some will be very critical of what we're presenting, and the people will go back and forth in the com box. We don't even have to defend what we say because people within
Catholics do.
People within the comment box will defend it. But it does generate controversy, and you mentioned something earlier. It is difficult. It may be difficult, or people may perceive it's difficult not to be associated with a political party, not to be partisan, or not to be labeled liberal or conservative. And sometimes those perceptions are put on the paper.
Exactly.
But the fact is that the teachings of the church and the church itself is not liberal or conservative, or it's not partisan. And so we have to be faithful to covering the issues that are relevant to our faith with honesty and with clarity. So, you know, the death penalty, we're going to talk about what the church teaches about the death penalty. We're going to talk about what the church teaches on contraception and abortion. But there's no fake divide between one issue and another. They're all a part of what we need to talk about in the register.
This is one of the things that we do have in common. A lot of times I'll be labeled as being with, supporting a certain party or not. I actually criticize the positions of any of the parties when they contradict Catholic teaching. That I don't find myself, and I assume it's true for you, we're not committed to any party platform or winning elections. Right. We're committed to getting to heaven.
You know, there's a key
and losing
point.
Election may sometimes help.
There's a key point in this, and that both parties are poor representations at some level or another of the church. So there is, where we find our common alignment are in the larger, you might say, bloodier battles that are the more important things, like abortion, where you do find us agreeing, let's say, with a party that has a platform against abortion. Of course, we're going to agree with that part of that platform, but that doesn't make us Republican Catholics, if you will.
No, because we're also going to stand up against their stances that contradict the church, like allowing abortion in the case of rape and incest.
Exactly.
As firmly against that as against anybody else.
Yep.
But one of the things that I cannot oppose is that it's time for a break. So we're going to take a break. By the way, you can go check the register online for free, correct?
Yes, it's free.
It's ncregister.com. And you can go check out the articles and read them there. We'll come back in a couple minutes and get some of your questions and your comments, as well as those of our studio audience. So please stay with us. Welcome back, and I would like to first of all invite you to come down here and be part of our studio audience. If you can make a trip down here to Alabama, please contact our pilgrimage department at 205-271-2966. Or you can also go to the website, EWTN.com, and they will give you information about where, what time the masses are, programs where you can be in the audience, places to stay, places to eat. I don't know if you have time for some of our Alabama barbecue and other good stuff. Fried green tomatoes,
Sure.
That's just down the street. So we'd love to have y'all come here. So please be part of it. And of course, getting up to Hansville to see the sisters and pray with them as well. Y'all ready for some questions?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Let's giddy up. Start off with Marianne. Hello, Marianne.
Hi, Father Pacwa. How are you?
Fine. Where are you from?
I'm from New York City. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Just a quick comment and a quick question for your guests. I've noticed for a long time within the media, whatever, be it radio, print, whatever kind of media, that they have either been, at the very least, dismissive of the Catholic Church and at the very worst, ridiculing and excoriating the Catholic Church. And I just want to ask your guests, what is their opinion as to why, when it comes to the Catholic Church, there is no fair and balanced reporting about the Catholic Church? Why is that, and why do so many people beat up on the Catholic Church? And I thank you so much, and God bless you for all the work you do.
Thank you, Marianne.
Quite frankly, I think it's because what we believe in is no longer acceptable in society in terms of especially the moral issues. And so since the moral issues the moral rule of society is so vastly different than what we teach as a church and we seek to live, I think it becomes a confusion. And so people no longer see the church as a body that is life-giving, but more just controlling those of us who are silly enough to be a part of it. And
Right.
because the people in the media don't often practice a religion, they don't practice a faith, they don't have a way of even understanding how we could believe. That almost seems silly that we could believe. So,
Do you have any other response to that?
Well, I mean, we're a contradiction and a confrontation to their moral values. So in essence, in some ways, our existence is a threat to the essence of who they've chosen to be and what they believe. So we are an irritant to them as long as we hold up standards and we fight against things that are destructive to human beings and to our relationship with God.
Yeah, certainly. They see that this, like you said, there's a war on women. Now they use that as a political tactic. You know, some folks on the left use that against the right, and they see for us, abortion, contraception, easy divorce, and the issue of marriage between a man and a woman, these are not about our politics, but they cannot see it except as political. And we see it as, do you do something that gets you sent to hell?
Right.
Or do you do something that gets you to heaven? That's our issue. And they cannot care about that. Does it get my candidate elected or not?
Does it make me feel good or not?
Well, there's that issue too.
Yeah.
But for many of them, does it get my side elected?
Yeah.
That is much more a strong drive in following the links between the media and the different sides is very important. Yeah. So we have to be alert to that. And again, they have to ridicule us in order to take away what they see as power.
Absolutely.
That's their issue. And so if they can put everything under, well, religion is the biggest cause of war in history. when in fact, as if you go to the University of Hawaii website, you'll find that no, it's atheism that is the biggest cause of war. 7 million religious wars in 2,000 years, 350 million under atheist wars and persecutions in 80 years. So count them up, folks.
Yeah.
And but they that's not what they portray.
Right.
And they see everything else in that line. Let's take a question from our studio audience. Sir, where are you from?
League City, Texas, just south of Houston.
Good to have you here. And what's your question?
Well, you brought up the issue that media is supposed to be to inform for the greater good. However, what I see a lot today is that media is more used as a tool by individuals and groups that want to promote a certain position. So since they approach the story in that way and you're coming to promote the greater good and virtue, are you having trouble getting access to the people and information and data that you need to report a story properly?
A very good question. And I wouldn't say that we don't have access because of the point of view that we're presenting or how we want to present the news. I think sometimes because we're small compared to the secular media, the television media, or newspapers, you know, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, these are very big papers. So sometimes access is limited because of our size. It may be possible that because we're labeled Catholic, they're like, oh, that's not a serious journalistic enterprise. The other challenge is the size of our staff, and many people don't realize this, but we have a staff of 7 in the editorial staff, and those are mostly editors. Only 2 of them are writers, and then the rest of the people who write for us are freelancers, and they're great freelancers. We have a wonderful team, but it's a small team to try to accomplish a large body of news. So
Sure.
that limits our access sometimes as well.
Sure. Let's take a caller. Hello, Velda.
Yes.
Hi, where are you from?
I'm from Texas, Father. Rio Grande Valley, Texas.
I love it down in the valley. Now, what is your question?
My question was that I hope that the Register keeps track of our political people that we vote into office and how they vote, or their history, or maybe even before they become members of our political powers, so that when we vote, we know where they stand and they can't just shed a lot of dim lights that we can't even see through if they're telling the truth or not.
So do you do that? Do you report on how candidates have voted in the past, on their past records? That is to say, are you in contact with the IRS? No.
You know, we vote, we do vote, but we have to present the issues. So we do present the issues when we have candidates who have voted in certain ways or politicians who have voted in certain ways. Most certainly on the issues, we will present how they voted, and there's no problem with us doing that.
There's nothing in terms of you being a not-for-profit.
We don't provide voter guides, just to be clear, so we don't go that far.
All right.
But presenting an issue,
right,
on the issue of abortion. If we're doing a story on the issue of abortion, then we are able to speak about how that issue has played out in that election, and that often has to do with how people have voted.
And we also profile politicians who are running for office and to bring to light issues that might be of concern or of a positive nature with respect to their affiliation with the Catholic Church or affinity on the issues that we care about. We'll raise those as well.
But it usually comes more on the issues that are at play, rather than you know, a side-by-side, here's a candidate, here's a voter's guide. We don't print those kind of things. It's an issue, it's a story on the issues.
Right. So you're not going to say, in the election for dog catcher back in Velda's town in the Rio Grande Valley, you're not going to present the 2 characters and say one really likes cats better than the other, and you're not going to bring that all up.
No.
All right. We have another question from our studio audience. And who are you and where are you from?
My name is Deacon Eric Clark. I'm from Lincoln, Nebraska.
And pretty newly ordained deacon at that, as I understand.
Yeah, about 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's still wet behind the hands there. So what is your question?
My question has to deal with new technology. I know with the advent of a lot of apps and iPads and tablets and stuff, a lot of newspaper companies are consolidating or they're going out of business. How do you foresee Catholic media getting into new technologies?
It's a great question. In 2008, when I started with the Register, we had absolutely no readers. We didn't have a single reader who read the Register, let's say, on a mobile device. This past year in 2012.
So in what year was that, 2008?
2008.
So there was no internet?
Not a single, well, the internet's there, but mobile devices hadn't progressed far enough.
I see.
Right, and so it wasn't necessarily available, but also our web strategy wasn't very strong. But just in 2012, for instance, we had 1,800,000 unique visits of folks reading the Register on mobile apps. We're also this year developing an app, which we'll have very soon, that will better format the content of the Register so that if you have an iPhone or an iPad or an Android, that you can read the paper better through those devices.
All right, now, again, some of us don't know apps.
Yeah, it's just basically a digital presentation of Register content so that you can view it on a tiny screen of a phone. So
Okay.
that's all that an app is. And another area is in 2008 we had about 800,000 visits to ncregister.com.
Which is the address, the internet address I gave, www.ncregister.com.
Right.
So you had 800,000 there.
In 2008. In 2012 we had over 8 million visits to NC
All doing
Register.
all right?
Yeah, so the growth is skyrocketing. So the question is, are we doing something? Yes, we're already well into that territory. I met a reporter who had been employed by one of the major news networks, and they said that they would have loved to have the kind of readership that we have for news on the Register. So that was kind of an interesting insight. So we're already there. We're already having a significant impact, and we're making more and more adjustments over time to better reach people who have different means through which they want to read the Register.
Okay. How do you get one of these apps?
Well, when it's ready, for instance, for the Register, you'll find that on the iTunes store, where you find all apps pretty much. But it'll be available. We'll let folks know through the Register that it's out there. You can also get an app for EWTN, where you can have the dramatized Bible and get access to EWTN materials already. Those are already available at EWTN.com is where you can find that out. But we're heading that direction as well.
You're scaring me.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do apps.
I can help you with that.
All right.
We can get you a hunting app or something like that.
Oh, I'm sure.
They have one for everything.
Yeah, I guess I just don't do apps. All right, let's get another question from our studio audience. Ma'am, where are you from?
Coming from England.
England. And your question?
I just want to know, I know that for several years now, the Register has been advancing the work of the magisterium and also presenting some information to the whole of the U.S. about the Catholic vision or whatever. But I do want to find out whether there's any spiritual impact associated with this Register.
That's a great question. It's something we take very seriously. The mission of EWTN is to advance the gospel according to the magisterium of the church. Of course, we share that mission in the Register. To advance the gospel, we have to introduce people who are at varying stages in their spiritual life to the truths that God desires us to understand about Him, about our relationship with Him. And at the Register, we take that very, very seriously. And so a lot of our content is oriented to nurturing the spiritual lives of our readers. I wrote a post recently about recommending a book on how, for instance, to pray the Liturgy of the Hours. We have a lot of that kind of material. Jeanette mentioned the Culture of Life section, where we regularly highlight even their spiritual practices. So as the seasons of the church roll around, if we have readers who are less familiar, less in rhythm with the liturgy of the church, we provide guides to Advent and guides to Lent and how to do the Stations of the Cross and that sort of thing. So it is hard to measure, but it's something that I'm very passionate about, which is why I wrote Navigating the Interior Life, but that we regularly cover in the Register.
So we don't do a voter's guide, but we do a guide to the sacraments,
there you go.
A guide to the Liturgy of the Hours.
Yeah.
There you go.
And we have a book review coming out very soon, and it'll be on Real Men Pray the Rosary right around Father's Day. So we do take very seriously the opportunity to present prayer opportunities for people, spiritual opportunities for people.
And we highlight, of course, your books when they come out. Your new recent one on sin, right? Wasn't that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
Yeah,
you're against it.
Yeah. Well, my original title was Sin. I'm against it,
right.
But sometimes I forget. But the editors didn't like that, so they call it The Battle Against Sin.
Yeah.
Winning the Battle Against Sin.
Yeah. Good book.
Oh, good. I'm glad you like it. Well, it's, but see, it is an important thing. We don't, we don't hear in the television or the radio side. You don't in the print side of EWTN's work promote any candidates. We just don't do that.
Yeah.
But we do promote confession.
Yep. Absolutely.
For the candidates sometimes.
Yeah. or recommend it.
Yeah, at least. It's something that, this is, very much what we want, to see is the promotion of the Catholic faith. But also, it sounds from the things that you discuss in the newspaper, the various aspects, is the integration of Catholic faith into all aspects of life. That's the goal.
Our publisher, Michael Warsaw, is also the CEO of EWTN, has said that the Register helps people to deal with that moment where their faith intersects with the events of culture and helps them to understand how it is that they live out their faith, whether it be because of an assault on their faith or even encouragements to deepen their faith. We're always looking to help them to understand how to navigate that, all with the aim of helping people to heaven. Back to the question about spirituality. Is if people have a deeper relationship with Christ, and this is the key too, this is a passion of ours. If they have a deeper relationship with Christ, know Him, understand Him, and follow Him, they're going to take that to the voter's booth. They're going to take that to their workplace, and it's going to affect society in ways that you cannot achieve by merely talking about a voting record of someone. But if you talk about the eternal value that God desires to instill in our hearts and to draw us to, if you really want to talk about changing America, changing our culture, changing the world, if you draw people's hearts to Christ and they have a real encounter with Him, that's what's going to bring lasting change.
Yes, yes, I'd say that's very much true. One aspect that interests me, because I have biritual faculties in one of the Eastern churches, in the Maronite Rite. Do you also cover the news about the other rites? And of course, they have their own newspapers, the different rites do. But do you also cover some of that so that the Latin Rite people know what's going on?
Sure, we do. I haven't seen as much in this year that I've been there. I don't recall too many stories on that, but I know for sure that we have covered it. Of course, we've covered in this last year the Anglican use, all of the things going on with the Anglican Church, the Anglican use.
Ordinariate.
Anglican Ordinariate, excuse me. We've covered a lot about that this year because of so many of the changes that have happened over these last couple of years with that. Regarding Byzantine Rite or other rites, Ukrainian Rite, I haven't seen too many stories this year but I know that the Register covers it. We love to hear of what's going on in those churches, so a lot of times we might just need a news pitch. If somebody sends us something of interest going on in one of those rites, we would love to cover it.
Yeah, and certainly, you know, with the worsening situation throughout the Middle East,
persecution,
the persecution of Christians in Egypt is getting much more serious. But not only there, in Iraq, in Syria, I mean, we have a couple bishops who have been killed, and no one has heard anything from them yet. You know, this is very serious.
Covering threats to religious liberty is very important to us, and those threats are very great internationally. They're also here at home in our own country. But that is something that is of utmost importance, to cover those threats to religious liberty, and we do try to cover that very frequently. That's a kind of international news that we don't hear too much about unless we're looking for it, and so that's something that the Register really wants to cover.
Yeah, you, as a reader and listener to the news, I oftentimes get a sense that the news of the persecution of Christians is contrary to issues political people want to promote about what's happening for oil exploration or other aspects of Middle Eastern politics. And they purposely downplay what's happening in Africa. The connection between the persecution of Christians and the rise of Al-Qaeda in some of the African countries is just not drawn. And this is something we want to hear from you.
Yeah, you know, Father, this is one of the issues, I think, in this year. I've been here for a year now at the Register, and that has been one of the issues that I find is most complex, is drilling down and trying to understand these situations of persecution. It's so complex. We should be covering it. We do cover it, and we'll do more of it.
Yeah, well, and I know enough people who are from the Middle East, and I'll try to get some of that news your way, because that'd be very important. Well, it's been a big news year, of course, because of the first resignation of a pope in hundreds of years, and then, of course, the election of the first Jesuit Pope Francis, and I'm sure that keeps you busy.
Yeah, it does.
You know, and dealing with various things over in Rome too, eh?
It's been a very busy year, and our papal coverage was really the spectacle of the year, I guess. And you know, we were asked for our papal issues, the issues that we did this year covering the Pope's resignation. We were asked by the Library of Congress to include issues of the Register and our coverage of papal events in the Library of Congress.
Because they saw it as a substantial contribution that needed to be.
Yeah, and they need that kind of information.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, it's been a very busy year.
Yeah, well, good. Well, you know, that's you know, one of those Chinese proverbs, you know, life be interesting is something that means there's going to be trouble.
Yeah.
And a lot of work.
Yeah.
A lot of work. Well, again, want to remind you that you can go and look up online ncregister.com, or if you prefer, you can also subscribe to the Register, that be in hard print form, by just going to EWTN's religious catalog, 1-800-854-6316, and they'll get you help on that. Thank you both for being here with us.
Thank you.
And may the Lord bless you and keep you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. And, you know, we can do this program and all the other shows that we do here at EWTN because of your support. This is your network. You bring it to you. So keep us in between your gas bill, electric bill, and your cable bill. We'll pay our bills too. Thank you.